I was asked if I would keep people informed as to how my new lower and lean system was built and was going to work. I wanted to show you kind of my setup. I'm about to try and set these plants up now that they're established on the twine. I guess I'll start from the beginning. I've done a whole bunch of different kinds of trellising over time. I've used little tomato cages, which were these. I started with those. Those, as anybody who has ever grown indeterminate tomatoes, are useless after the first month. I've actually tried much larger tomato cages, and those last for a little while longer. I've tried stakes. They only make them up to 6 feet, and the indeterminate tomatoes grow much, much taller than that, particularly cherry tomatoes. So I found that tomato cages are just don't do what I need them to do, and it's becoming a great deal of frustration more than anything else with that. Then I've also tried the Florida weave method, which is, or I think it has other names as well, but basically you start like here with 2 pretty sturdy stakes, and then as the plants grow and get larger, you'll wrap twine from this end here, wrap it around here, run it along the plants, wrap it around here, and run it along the plants back the other way, and sort of tie it off. And then as the plants grow, you add a second tier of string, and a third tier of string, and a fourth tier of string, etc. That's actually particularly useful for, as I understand it, determinate tomatoes. It worked adequately well. I found that the tomatoes got really pretty weighty though for the twine, and they would just start flopping all over each other. So it does help quite a bit for most of the season, I would say. But it didn't promote the kind of really air circulation that I wanted. Particularly my garden is a little bit in the shade, and I only do ground watering anyway. I don't water from above because I learned the hard way that that's how you spread blight, which is why I have so much mulch down as well. It really helps with the splashback, and I haven't had any issues with it since then. In any case, I've tried several different methods. I wasn't really satisfied with any of them, and I did some research online, reading, and I joined a bunch of gardening groups and did some YouTube research. YouTube is a wonderful thing, and I found something called a lower and lean trellising system. And basically, what the advantage of that is that indeterminate tomatoes just keep growing, right? But when they're trellised to things, when you hook it to the top of a trellis, it doesn't stop here. It just keeps growing, and so it ends up flopping over. What a lower and lean trellis system will allow you to do is you train the plant, you keep it to one stem, and you train the plant up a wire. And as it grows above the top of the trellis, you let out more wire and literally lower the plant so that it never gets taller than this. You start pruning off the bottom leaves, so anything up to the latest group of fruit, whatever the fruit that has set is. It really doesn't need anything below that. And so you keep the stem really nice and clean at the bottom so that it doesn't, the leaves don't attract diseases as you lower them to the ground. You'll really just have bare stem, which will get a larger sort of pile of bare stem as the plant grows, and you're lowering it and lowering it as it gets taller and taller. So the top of the plant never really reaches more than the top of the trellis. I hope that makes sense. So I have always just used bamboo because it's available, and it's easy to work with. So every year, it's never failed. I go on Craigslist and find somebody who's desperate to get rid of some of the bamboo on their property, and they will let anybody come and cut it down. So I was very lucky, had a very generous person this year invite me to come and cut some stuff down. The beautiful thing is that with most people's bamboo, the bamboo that you get in the store is typically no higher than about 6 feet, and that's not particularly useful in any way, at least for me. So I was able to get, you know, bamboo sort of in the wild grows much, much, much taller than that. So I think I was originally, some of these were as long as 18 feet. I think I cut them down to 16 feet or maybe a little less just because that's how big my husband's truck is, the bed of his truck. So that's what we could fit, which is really nice. I only had to make a few long trellises instead of a bunch of shorter ones. So I just planned it out what I thought would fit in this space. So here I've planted 3 rows, and you can actually, one of the advantages of lower and lean is that you can apparently plant more plants in closer proximity to one another. And the reasoning behind that is because there is sufficient airflow that it doesn't restrict either sunlight or airflow, because you're removing those leaves and lowering them so that the plants can get the oxygen and the sunlight that they need. So for whatever reason, you're able to plant things in closer proximity, which is nice. And it's one of the reasons that it's used, the lower and lean process is used in professional greenhouses, the people that will grow your tomatoes year round. So they'll use, instead of the top of this, they will use the top of the high tunnel or the top of the greenhouse as the anchor for this, pretty high up, and they can continue to do it year round. So this section here is Campari type tomatoes, and I just started those from seed from the Sam's Club tomatoes that I get there, and it's worked really well every year. Over here, one section of this is, I think, Early Girl, and the other one is cherry tomatoes, and I don't remember which is which, and I guess I'll just find out when they start to make tomatoes. You can see here, I just cut the stuff to the size that I wanted. I angled the end so it would make it easier to drive into the dirt. And then I learned how to lash from YouTube, and I've just lashed these top pieces on, and it's really sturdy. I mean, don't want to hang on it because I'm a grown woman, but this will hold a lot of weight. So we're in good shape there, and that's what I'm going to be hanging all of my hangers off of. So you can see here I have a bunch of hangers already made, and I'm going to show you guys about how to make the hangers themselves, and then also how to attach the twine, and then to attach the hook to the plant with some support so that it's holding it up. You'll notice that all of my stuff is black. That's just my particular preference. I like to be able to see the green against the black. And also I find that painting the bamboo helps keep it intact and in good shape longer than leaving it untreated. I have found that it resists the rain and the rot significantly better. So that's one of the other reasons I paint it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make these hooks themselves. They are professionally available. There are some fancier kinds with rollers and whatnot, but I have found that those are a little fancier than what I need. Whereas these are based on something called tomahooks, which I think Johnny Seeds maybe sells. Which is, I guess, a foreshortening of tomato hooks, but this is my version of them. And the reason I made my own version is because the version that they sell, this top part is really as thin as a wire, maybe like that. And so these hooks, the hooks that they make, are just not going to fit where I need them to fit. So I had to go ahead and improvise and figure out how to make my own. So I'm going to show you how to do that, okay? So I'll be right back to do that. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how to go about making the actual hooks themselves. So you'll need a few things. You need wire, first of all, of course. This is galvanized steel wire. I believe it's 16 gauge. You could probably use 14. I wouldn't get too much smaller than 16 gauge, or maybe you might be able to get away with 18 gauge, but it probably wouldn't be strong enough really to hold the weight of these plants, and they do get quite long and quite heavy. So I was kind of looking for a compromise between it being malleable enough to make the actual hooks themselves and strong enough to actually hold what I needed it to hold. You could use coat hanger wire, and in fact that's what I started with, metal coat hangers. I just found them really difficult to work with. I didn't find that they were as malleable as I needed, and I was just getting frustrated. So this is a really nice compromise. It's definitely bendy enough to do what I need to do, but it's strong enough. So I got this. Actually, it was more difficult to find than you'd think. I wasn't able to find it, I think I said, at Home Depot, but I was able to find it at Lowe's in the picture hanging section. All right, so you need wire. You need a pair of needle nose pliers. The wire here has been cut into sections. In my case, I just did some trial and error to find out how long I needed it to be. 16 inches was a good length for me. It gave me enough wire to wrap around the bamboo stake that I needed it to wrap around. And of course, whatever it is that you're going to be using as whatever you're hanging the hooks off of. In my case, it's bamboo trellising. And I just picked a piece that was as big as the largest diameter pole that I had, assuming that would fit everything. So you take your wire and you just go to one end. And I'm going to start here with this little loop. And I do this little loop not for any other reason other than it prevents me from hurting myself. So when you cut these wires, the ends are really quite sharp. And I just didn't want to be scratching myself every time I reached for one of these. So the end loops are really more for safety than anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Grab it with the needle nose pliers and just make a small loop around. And you can see, you can kind of make it closer if you want. Pull it in a little, and that way, make sure it's flush so that nothing sticks out and stabs you. You want to do the exact same thing at the other end in the same direction. So if I'm pushing away from me at this end, if I push away from me, I want to push away on this end as well. So both loops are sort of going in the same direction away from the wire. And the reason, so here's the loop on this end, and here's the loop on this end. And the reason for that is so that the wires both face out. You could theoretically have them maybe facing in, but then it would just be more difficult to get the thing on and off. So it's just easier when this little end loop is facing out here. The next thing we're going to do is make the actual loop that hangs on the bamboo stake itself. So you take whatever it is you're hanging it off of, and you're basically just gonna, basically just, with this end, with the loop kind of coming out on the outside of the bamboo or whatever it is that you're using, you're just basically gonna bend it round. Pretty straightforward, right? And I'm just straightening this a wee bit so it makes it a little bit easier for me to do the other end. Same thing, the loop should be facing sort of up so that it ends up on the outside of the loop of the bend here of the hook. So sometimes it takes a minute to get it settled. Just bend. So now I have this. We've got the hooks themselves in. Now we just have to, and they should be both facing the same direction, and the loops, it should be sort of symmetrical. This side's a mirror image of this side. All right, so we've now done this part. Now we're going to work on the place where the twine will live. So the twine gets wrapped around this part here. So in order to do that, I find a spot right where, kind of the opposite of where this loop ends, and I take it with the loop facing in, and I bend it back out. So I have this. Okay? I do the exact same thing to the opposite side. Okay? So now, again, it should be symmetrical. And then we're just going to create this part by bending these two things in. And to do that, you find a spot a little less than halfway and bend it back the other way. And now you have this part, right? The top part or bottom, depending on which way you flip it, where the twine will live. And do the same thing on this side. And that's it. That's all there is to it. You see these aren't exactly the same, but it's good enough for government work. So, yeah, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. To just make sure this is kind of even. And you can see it'll hang. And then when it's time to flip, just unwind and flip. It's that simple. Now I'm going to probably spray paint these black. I've got some black twine coming, just again because I like the look of that. But you certainly wouldn't have to do that. I also find that the spray painting helps protect anything metal from rusting and anything wooden from falling apart. So things do last a little longer. But it's not a necessary step. So these are they, and I'm going to go ahead and spray paint them and come back, and then I'll show you how to actually set it up on the garden itself. Okay, so now that you have your tomato hooks themselves, the next step is to wrap them with the twine that you're going to use as effectively the stake. So as you can see, I've spray painted these black. That's just my preference. You certainly don't have to do that. And I'm using fishing twine. This is 30-pound fishing twine, but you could use garden twine, you could use anything, so long as doesn't have too much give. And it needs to be thick enough to be used properly with these tomato clips, which I'll show you about in a minute. So all you do is you tie some of your twine to either the bottom or the top of the tomato hook, and you just wrap it round and round and round and round and round. And then when you're ready, you'll be able to unwind as the plant gets bigger, like that. So you need to, you'll be hanging the tomato hook off of the trellis itself, off the top of the trellis itself, like that. And you're going to need to secure it to the ground so it's nice and taut at the other end. So you could do that any number of ways. You could use lawn staples like this. These are actually sort of DIY. I just cut up a coat hanger and shaped them like lawn staples. You could use a stick. You could use a piece of bamboo. Anything that's going to get it in the ground pretty well and make it pretty sturdy, because you want the length of the wire to be relatively taut. So all you do is you take the opposite end once you've wrapped your twine around, and make sure you have enough for extra growth that you're going to need. So I basically did some calculations, and I did essentially twice the height of my trellis itself, which is about 6 feet tall. So I just measured out maybe a little bit more than twice that height, assuming, because these are indeterminate tomatoes that, especially the cherry tomatoes, get quite long. So that'll give you plenty. And you take the opposite end from the end that you wrapped, and you just tie it to the garden staple. This is fishing line, so it's not as easy to work with as twine would be. It's kind of springy, but we'll get it done. There we go, that's one. And then knot it off. And that's it. So this end is gonna get put into the ground deep, and this end is gonna hang, and you can see it's pretty taut between. The reason for that is you're gonna be using these tomato clips to secure the plant to the line itself, to this twine itself. You don't have to. Some people wrap the plants around the twine. Some people, you could use zip ties, you could use twist ties, you could use string. I just happen to like these. So the cool thing about these is there's a little spot right here that the twine itself goes through. And then it locks, when you close it, it locks that twine in place. And this is where your vine goes through. So your your twine is trapped in here, and this tomato clip won't move at all. And then you have a nice big space for your vines, so the vines can get pretty large and not be affected by this. So just to show you quickly how it works, I'm going to take my my twine here, and the reason I ordered 30-pound fishing line is because I knew that it was thick enough to be held fast by this tomato clip. And you stick it in the little V-shaped divot here for the twine itself. And then you just will close this around the vine. And once the tomato clip is on that vine, it's not moving. It's not going anywhere. It's not going up, it's not going down. So it's really pretty sturdy. And then that's how your vine will be clipped to the trellis. Okay, so I have a bunch here to do, and once I'm done, I'll take you into the garden itself and show you how to set that up. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so now we're going to go into the garden, and here you can see some that have already been done. It starts up here and all the way down, and you can see the little the little tomato clips are on there, and it's pretty sturdy. So let's try with a plant over here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hang up the hook, and then we're going to unwind. Oops. Unwind. Oh, I keep doing this. There we go. Unwind what we need. Okay. That's about right. And now I'm just going to take the hook that I tied it to right here and find a spot and just push it in the ground there, maybe a little bit closer to the stem. And then find a convenient spot and just clip the plant, and now it's sturdy and on there, not going anywhere. Now we can see there we go. And then you just follow the string up, and that's what it looks like. And here we have, again, a whole bunch of them, and they're all hooked up nicely. And then you just keep clipping as it grows taller, and then when it gets to the height of the trellis, you just take this off and flip it over either once or twice and let out some additional string, and you're in good shape. It'll keep growing. If you trim the bottom leaves here along the stem, oh, there's a ladybug, below where the fruit set is, it should give you a nice clean bottom, so you don't have anything dragging along the ground and inviting disease. So anyway, there you go. I'm going to finish this row, and I guess that's it. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully it won't be too difficult, and it'll hold up to the rain and the wind and whatnot. It's relatively flexible, so I hope it should be. So I will let you know how we do again in a few weeks.